Perfection is a lofty ideal, a distant mirage on the horizon that promises us the satisfaction of ultimate achievement, yet it slips away the moment we get close. It tells us to wait, to prepare more, to refine endlessly, and in doing so, it keeps us frozen in place. We all know that feeling, the sense that if only we could be more skilled, more knowledgeable, more confident, the world would finally open its doors to us. But here's the truth. Perfection is not a state to reach. It's a mirage that distracts us from the real work, action. Perfection is an enemy in disguise, holding us back from taking the very first step that could transform our lives. You see, we live in a world that tells us to wait for the right conditions, the perfect time, the perfect moment, the perfect version of ourselves. And the cruel irony is, that perfect moment never comes. If you sit still and wait, you will forever be waiting. Waiting for things to align, waiting for your skills to be flawless, waiting for your circumstances to improve. You could wait for a lifetime, and it would still never be enough. Why? Because perfection is not a finish line. It's an illusion. The real power, the real potential lies not in waiting, but in moving forward, in taking that first step. The reality is, action is what moves us forward, not perfection. A person who takes action is like a boat in the water. They may not have all the answers, they may not have the perfect map, but they are moving. The boat may sway, it may face rough waters, but it moves nonetheless. And moving, even imperfectly, is infinitely more powerful than sitting still, paralyzed by the idea of perfection. When we wait for perfection, we allow fear and doubt to govern our actions. When we become obsessed with the idea of doing things just right, and in doing so, we become blind to the growth and opportunities that come through experience, mistakes, and learning along the way. Consider the stories of the great achievers in history. Do you think they waited for everything to be perfect before they acted? Do you think the inventors of the telephone, the airplane, the internet sat in their rooms waiting for the perfect conditions to act? No. They took risks, made mistakes, and encountered failure after failure. But each of those failures taught them something. Each setback was a lesson in what didn't work, and that's what ultimately led to success. The power of their success lies in their willingness to act, to try, and to keep going in the face of uncertainty. Let's be clear about something here. Taking action doesn't mean charging forward recklessly without any thought or planning. It means choosing to begin, even if you don't have all the answers. It means making the decision that doing something, anything, is better than standing still. It means being willing to accept the inevitable mistakes along the way, because those mistakes will teach you more than perfection ever could. In the grand narrative of life, you're not defined by how perfect your plans are. You're defined by how much you choose to act. Action is what shapes your character, your destiny, and your impact on the world. It's easy to look at someone who has achieved greatness and think they had it all figured out from the start. But the truth is, they took action without knowing all the answers, and they learned along the way. Every great success story is filled with moments of uncertainty, hesitation, and failure. But the key to their success was never about perfection. It was about their determination to keep moving, no matter how imperfect their steps might have been. Remember this, it is in the doing that we discover our potential. It is in the struggle, the attempt, the failure, and the recovery that we build strength, wisdom, and resilience. The perfect moment will never arrive, and the perfect plan will never unfold in the way we expect. But the moment you act, you begin to shape your future. And with every act, every effort, you take one more step closer to who you are meant to become. The greatest obstacle we face is not the lack of ability, but the fear of imperfection. The idea that we must be flawless to succeed is a false belief that holds us back. We must let go of that need for everything to be perfect and instead focus on progress. Progress, no matter how small, is still progress. It's the consistent effort, the willingness to fail, and the refusal to quit that brings results. When you start acting, you'll find that things don't need to be perfect. They just need to be moving forward. Think about the first time you tried something new. Did you know exactly what to do? Did you have everything in place? Probably not. And yet you took that first step. You learned, you adapted, and you grew. That is the essence of success. It's not about waiting for perfection, but about stepping into the unknown with courage and faith that you'll figure it out as you go. Perfectionism is not the path to success. Action is. So long as we sit on the sidelines waiting for everything to fall into place, we rob ourselves of the very thing we need to succeed: experience. The only way to truly grow, to truly find success, is to act, to step into the discomfort of uncertainty and keep moving forward. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Each step, even the imperfect ones, builds the foundation for something greater. Success is not a destination. It's the accumulation of countless imperfect actions, each one leading to the next, each one shaping who we are and what we become. The more we act, the more we learn. The more we try, the closer we get to our true potential. And the more we move forward, the more we realize that perfection was never the goal. The goal was to act, to begin, to learn, and to grow. And that is the true power of action over perfection. There's a deep truth that's often overlooked, and it's this: waiting until you're ready will always hold you back. In fact, you'll never feel completely ready. That feeling of readiness, the one that tells you now is the time or I've prepared enough, is more of a mirage than a signal of actual preparedness. So many of us are paralyzed by this notion of readiness, thinking that everything must be perfect before we can act, before we can take the plunge. We wait for the stars to align, for the perfect moment to reveal itself, and in doing so, we end up waiting forever. The truth is, the perfect moment doesn't exist. Life doesn't wait for you to get everything in order, and neither should you. The most powerful decision you can make is not to wait for everything to fall into place, but to act before you feel ready. If you wait until you have all the answers, until you feel prepared enough, you'll miss the opportunities that are right in front of you. Perfection isn't the goal, progress is, and progress comes from taking action. When you take that first step, no matter how uncertain or imperfect, it's like you're planting the seeds for growth. You may not have everything figured out, but you're beginning the process of figuring it out. You're starting the journey that will lead you to where you need to be. We are all constantly striving for something more, something better. It could be a career change, a personal goal, or even a relationship. Whatever it is, we often put it off, telling ourselves we'll act once we're ready. But that day of readiness rarely comes. It's like waiting for the tide to be perfect to set sail. If you wait for the perfect wave, you'll be stuck on the shore forever. The truth is, you need to step into the water, let the waves come, and adapt as they come. Every step you take, every decision you make, moves you closer to the person you want to be and the life you want to create. There's a fear that comes with stepping into the unknown. It's natural. We fear failure, rejection, and mistakes. We tell ourselves that we'll act when we have a clearer understanding of what lies ahead. But that's where we go wrong. Clarity comes from action, not from waiting for the perfect conditions. The most successful people in the world did not wait for clarity to strike before they acted. They acted first and let the clarity come later. The learning happens in the doing, not in the waiting. The biggest breakthroughs often come when you're in the middle of the journey, not before it begins. Think about the last time you started something new. How did it feel? Did you feel fully prepared? Likely not, and yet you did it anyway. The reason you succeeded in that moment was not because you had everything figured out, but because you chose to act despite the uncertainty. You understood that action was the gateway to progress. You didn't wait for the perfect conditions. You created them by starting, by putting one foot in front of the other. And in that process, you learned, adapted, and grew. The same principle applies to any goal you pursue. Whether it's starting a new business, writing a book, or pursuing a dream, the key is not to wait for the perfect moment. It's to start, even when you don't feel ready. It's to embrace the discomfort of the unknown, to understand that you'll learn more in one step of action than in 1,000 hours of planning. Action builds momentum, and momentum creates change. It's easy to overthink, to delay, to convince yourself that tomorrow's a better time to begin, but tomorrow never comes. The only time you truly have is today. The only chance you have to act is right now. And the more you delay, the more you rob yourself of the progress you could be making. Take, for example, the story of any great achievement. None of the pioneers in history, from scientists to artists, waited for the perfect conditions to begin their work. They didn't wait until they had every answer. They acted with what they had, knowing that the act of doing would bring the clarity and answers they sought. The world's greatest inventions, movements, and successes were born out of the willingness to act before feeling fully prepared, to take the first step when all they had was the courage to begin. If you wait for the moment when you feel 100% ready, you may end up waiting forever. The key is to start, to begin the journey, and then figure things out along the way. You don't need to have the entire roadmap laid out in front of you to begin. You just need to know where you're going, take a deep breath, and start walking. The direction will become clearer with each step you take. The beauty of taking action, especially when you feel unprepared, is that it forces you to grow. It stretches you, challenges you, and forces you to confront your fears, your doubts, and your weaknesses. But it's in that very discomfort that your greatest growth occurs. The more you stretch yourself, the more you realize that you are capable of much more than you ever thought. You grow not because you waited for the perfect conditions, but because you decided to move forward despite your fears, doubts, and insecurities. In a world that constantly tells us to be perfect, to be flawless, and to wait for the right time, the most powerful thing you can do is act. Don't wait for everything to fall into place. Start now. The moment you take action, you've already won. The process will teach you what you need to know. The journey will show you the way. And in the end, you'll realize that waiting for the perfect moment was never the key to success. It was the willingness to step forward into the unknown that changed everything. As you face your own challenges, remember this: action is the key. Action is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Don't let fear of the unknown hold you back. Don't wait for readiness that will never come. Start now and let the journey show you the way. You are more than capable of handling whatever comes your way, and the only way to discover that is to take the first step. There is a principle that too many of us overlook, yet it holds the key to turning dreams into reality. Momentum is far more powerful than perfection. Perfection, we are told, is the ideal, the goal, the ultimate state we strive for. We often believe that success is achieved only when everything is flawless, when every detail is accounted for, and when we've perfected our approach. But here's the hard truth: perfection is paralyzing. It stops us from moving forward, it keeps us in a state of analysis and self-doubt, and it convinces us that nothing is worth doing unless it's done flawlessly. The power, however, lies not in perfection, but in momentum. The ability to keep moving forward, no matter the obstacles or imperfections that arise. Consider for a moment the idea of a boulder resting at the top of a hill. It sits there, still and unyielding, waiting for the right push. But the longer it remains motionless, the harder it becomes to get it moving. It takes a great deal of effort to get the boulder to roll, and yet once it's in motion, it gains speed, and eventually it moves on its own. The same is true for our goals and dreams. When we try to achieve something, we often expect perfection right from the start, but that's not how life works. Progress doesn't come from perfecting every little detail before taking a step forward. Progress comes from moving, from building momentum, from taking action and adjusting along the way. We've all heard stories of people who started with nothing but a single step, a spark of momentum. They didn't wait for everything to align, and they didn't wait for perfection. They just took that first step, and with each step, momentum built. The more they moved, the more they learned. They didn't need to be perfect from the outset. What they needed was the courage to begin, to trust that momentum would carry them forward, and it did. Momentum is the force that propels us, that carries us through the hardest of times, that keeps us going even when we face setbacks, obstacles, and failures. And while I still have it, there's a truth that we often forget in our pursuit of perfection. The more you wait for the perfect time, the more you delay your own progress. The more you try to perfect every step, the more you paralyze yourself in fear of making a mistake. Perfectionism keeps you trapped in a cycle of inaction, where you are constantly refining, improving, and adjusting, but never actually moving forward. And in the end, the opportunity passes you by. When you focus too much on perfection, you lose sight of the power of forward motion. Momentum, however, doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be consistent. With each small effort, you build a foundation that can carry you forward, even through the challenges that lie ahead. Think about any significant achievement in your life. Did you achieve it by waiting for the ideal circumstances? Did you wait for everything to be perfect? Or did you act despite the uncertainty, despite the unknowns, despite the fear of failure? The truth is, success rarely comes from a place of perfection. It comes from the willingness to try, to fail, and to keep moving. It comes from the understanding that momentum is built on action, not on waiting. Each small action you take, each decision you make, each step forward adds to the momentum that pushes you closer to your goal. And in that process, you discover that momentum is the secret weapon that gets you to the finish line. We all know that feeling of being stuck. We've all had moments where we feel like we're spinning our wheels, not getting anywhere. But what often happens when we push ourselves to take that first step to create momentum is that things begin to shift. The energy that once felt blocked starts to flow. The direction that once seemed unclear starts to reveal itself. And what seemed impossible becomes achievable. The simple act of moving forward, of gaining momentum, creates an energy that transforms everything around you. Momentum is the force that helps you break through barriers, push past doubts, and find new opportunities. It's not perfection that gives you the strength to move forward. It's momentum. Momentum is the ultimate malicious force that sweeps away all your fears. The key to building momentum lies in understanding that small steps are enough. You don't need to make giant leaps. You don't need to perfect every move. You just need to keep moving. Each small step you take feeds into the larger journey, and before long, you'll look back and see how far you've come. The more you move, the more confident you become. The more you push yourself forward, the more you realize that action is the answer. You may not have the perfect plan, the perfect skill set, or the perfect circumstances, but if you have the momentum to keep going, you will get there. Momentum is what gets you through the tough times, the failures, the setbacks. It's the energy that keeps you going even when it feels like progress is slow or non-existent. It's important to recognize that momentum doesn't always come easily. There will be times when it feels like you're moving in circles, or that you're taking one step forward and two steps back. That's okay. Momentum is not about perfection, but about consistency. It's about showing up, doing the work, and trusting that each effort, no matter how small, is building towards something greater. The path to success is not a straight line, and it's not about avoiding failure. It's about persevering, about taking that next step, and trusting that the momentum will carry you through. When we embrace momentum over perfection, we free ourselves from the weight of unrealistic expectations. We allow ourselves to fail, to stumble, and to learn along the way. We understand that failure is not the end, but a part of the process. Each failure is simply a step in the journey, a necessary experience that teaches us what we need to know. When we stop waiting for perfection and start focusing on momentum, we take control of our own growth. We stop worrying about how we look, how we compare to others, and we focus on the progress we're making. And in that space, everything changes. We stop waiting for the perfect moment, and we start creating our own momentum, one step at a time. Our heart. The power of momentum lies in its ability to transform. It transforms hesitation into action, fear into confidence, and uncertainty into clarity. When we choose momentum over perfection, we choose growth, progress, and success. We choose to take the first step, to keep moving, and to trust that momentum will carry us toward the life we want to create. And that, ultimately, is the true power that drives us forward. It is momentum, not perfection, that leads us to our goals. And it is momentum that will carry us through the challenges and setbacks we inevitably face along the way. There is a simple but profound truth that we often overlook in our pursuit of success and fulfillment. The only way to truly improve is through action. We tend to think that we must first perfect ourselves, our skills, our knowledge, our abilities, before we take any meaningful steps toward our goals. We think that only after we have everything figured out, after we've become the person we aspire to be, can we start moving forward. But the reality is, the journey of improvement isn't about waiting until you're perfect. It's about acting, stumbling, learning, and growing as you go. Every time you step into the unknown, every time you take action despite your doubts or lack of experience, you are giving yourself the opportunity to learn. You can read every book, watch every tutorial, or plan every step, but the true learning only happens when you apply what you know in the real world. The world doesn't care about your perfect plan. It cares about your ability to act in the face of uncertainty. You don't learn how to swim by reading about it or watching others do it. You learn by jumping into the water, getting wet, struggling to stay afloat, and then adjusting your approach as you go. The water teaches you how to swim, not the book or the video. Similarly, life teaches you how to live, how to grow, and how to improve, not through perfect planning or preparation, but through action. We often think of improvement as something that happens in the future, once we've done enough work, once we've become good enough. But the truth is, improvement happens in the present moment, through the actions you take right now. Every effort you make, no matter how small or imperfect, is a step toward becoming better. It's through trial and error, through experiencing the discomfort of failure and learning from it, that we gain the wisdom and understanding we need to improve. You don't learn how to run by studying running, you learn how to run by running, and with each step you improve. It's the same with anything in life. You don't learn to speak confidently by reading about how to speak confidently. You learn by speaking, by putting yourself out there, by making mistakes and refining your approach. Improvement is not something that happens in your mind alone, it happens in your actions. There's a myth that we should only act when we have everything figured out, when we feel fully prepared. This idea of being perfectly ready before taking action holds so many of us back. It convinces us that we must be flawless before we can even begin. But in truth, waiting for perfection is a trap. It's a lie we tell ourselves to avoid the discomfort of failure. Perfectionism is not only unrealistic, it's counterproductive. The more we try to perfect ourselves, the more we delay taking action. And in doing so, we miss out on the very opportunities that would have allowed us to grow. The world doesn't reward perfection, it rewards progress. And progress comes from action. Think about the times in your life when you've made the most significant progress. It wasn't during the times when everything was perfect, when you had all the answers, when you were fully prepared. No. It was during the times when you took action despite your fears, despite your doubts, and despite your imperfections. It was when you made the decision to move forward even when you didn't feel ready. And in that act of moving forward, you learned. You learned from your mistakes. You learned from your successes. You learned from the feedback the world gave you. You improved. The real process of growth doesn't happen when you're sitting on the sidelines, preparing to be perfect. It happens when you're in the arena, actively participating, making mistakes, and learning from them. We need to shift our focus from the idea of perfection to the idea of progress. Progress is the true measure of growth. It's the small, consistent steps that lead to lasting change. It's the ability to move forward, to make mistakes, and to keep learning. It's the willingness to take action, even when you don't feel fully ready. And the more you take action, the more you will improve. With each step you take, you'll gain clarity, you'll refine your approach, you'll learn new skills, and before long, you'll look back and realize how much you've grown. Not because you waited for everything to be perfect, but because you acted, learned, and adapted along the way. The mistake we make is thinking that improvement happens when we have all the answers. But the truth is, improvement comes from asking the right questions and being open to learning. It comes from being willing to admit that you don't know everything, and that's okay. It comes from the humility to acknowledge that you won't always get it right, but that's part of the process. Every mistake, every failure is an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to refine your approach, to adjust your course, and to get closer to your goals. Improvement is about making progress, not about being perfect. It's about showing up, doing the work, and being open to feedback. It's about taking action and using each action as a stepping stone toward becoming better. In order to improve, you must be willing to make mistakes. You must be willing to fail. And in order to do that, you must be willing to act, even when you don't feel ready. Perfectionism tells us to wait for the perfect conditions, the perfect plan, the perfect timing. But life doesn't work that way. You will never feel completely ready. And if you wait for the perfect moment, you'll be waiting forever. The only way to improve is to start, to take action, and to keep moving forward. The more you act, the more you learn. The more you learn, the more you improve. And the more you improve, the closer you get to becoming the person you aspire to be. Remember, perfection is not the goal. The goal is progress. The goal is improvement. And the only way to achieve that is through action. You don't improve by waiting for everything to be perfect. You improve by taking action, by making mistakes, and by learning from those mistakes. It's through doing, not planning, that you become the best version of yourself. And in that process, you'll realize that perfection was never the end goal. The real goal was always progress, and that progress comes through action.